As a child, I was very lucky to have probably what had to be the greatest grandmother in the world. Somehow, this woman could not see the evil that lived in my sister and I. Maybe we were just on our best behavior while we were there, but she somehow only saw the perfection in us. So when she passed away, it was a tragedy. It was difficult to handle. We were very, very sad. But she was old, and we all know that death is just part of life. And so we adapt and we move forward. I also had a friend about 30 years ago, went to high school with him, knew him through college, one of the greatest guys I ever met. Was on a trip in China, got struck by lightning on top of a mountain, playing a game with the local British consulate. He must have been, 35 years old or so. That was a shock. That felt like he was being ripped from me. It was very difficult to manage that loss. Fortunately, I don't know anyone who's ever been murdered, but I can only imagine that it's a little bit like that, where someone is unexpectedly taken. It feels like they're ripped from you, and it's very difficult to handle that loss. Divorce is like that. It's like a murder. It doesn't feel like the natural ending of a relationship. It feels like something has been ripped from you. And there is a part of you that dies when that happens. For some guys, it's a really big part, and it's very hard to get past. So today, I want to talk about really the many deaths that we experience going through divorce and how to get past it. The death that we experience in divorce is not a real death. It's more of a death of an identity. And it may be the death of many identities. Some people call it an ego death. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but it definitely is the loss of something that you identified with, a role that you played, a person that you were. And the trauma associated with this loss is very much like that of a death. People focus very much on the loss of the relationship, like that's the money shot, like that's the one that's going to get you, but that's not it. That's not it. Yeah, you definitely miss having the company of your wife, maybe, but as a man, you played this very important role, this role in life that is, held in very high regard as a husband, as a father, as all these very important positions, and people look up to you, and you have a purpose. And once that purpose is gone and that role has ended, that identity dies. And when that identity dies, the trauma associated with it, when added to the loss of your family, your wife, maybe your kids, maybe your home, I would suggest that divorce might very well be the most traumatic event a person can experience, short of going to war or something. I think it's something that we don't give a lot of attention to. And I think it's something that deserves a lot more attention. When we're young, growing up, we experience lots of little identity deaths, and they come to us from rejection. So you get rejected by a girl, you get blown off by your friends, you experience the sense of loss, and that rejection, causes a lot of pain. As we get older, we're not quite as sensitive, so the rejection isn't quite so bad. So if you don't get a job or something along those lines, it's not that bad. But when you commit yourself to a marriage, when you go all in like that, and you have kids, and you have that whole relationship, losing that identity, once it's fully formed, is very, very tough. If you've been married for 10 or 15 or 20 years, you've really taken that identity on wholeheartedly, and it's really hard to distinguish between that identity and who you are individually. In fact, I would suggest that those two things kind of merge into a single entity. And it's not until you are facing divorce, you find yourself living on your own, that you finally come to terms with the fact that that's not who you are, and that there's someone inside you that is not that. And that's kind of a shock, to be honest with you. I think it messes with a lot of people. It makes it very difficult for guys to get past that initial shock of divorce. Because when you find yourself living alone in your own place, and oftentimes it's not going to be anywhere near as nice as your old house, you're going to be not seeing the same old stuff. Not, all the pictures and all the furniture and all the dishes and all those little things are all gone. And now it's just you. And you get this sense of complete anonymity. It's like, who the fuck am I? And that's a tough pill to swallow. It's very hard to come to terms with. The good news is you can come to terms with it. Let's talk about how you get past that. Being single after divorce is kind of like being born again. It's a rebirth into a new life, a new role, a new identity. It's an opportunity to really find a more authentic and fulfilling way to live your life, and to address some of the things, the shortcomings that you may have had in the past. Just yesterday I was reading through the comments, and one of the commenters was talking about how his wife had just told him within the last couple of weeks that she wanted a divorce, and that she wanted the kids and the house and the whole 9 yards. And in his comment, I could tell there was a sense of resignation with a sense of resistance. He wanted to find a way to keep this from happening. That's the resistance. But there was a part of him that knew there's probably nothing he could do to change it. And that's the resignation. You're kind of accepting what is. So long as that resistance exists, so long as you resist what is, you're going to experience pain. That applies to just about every situation. Anytime you're experiencing a difficult thing and you're resisting it, you're probably going to make that situation harder than it needs to be. Now, of course, there are exceptions, like if you're fighting cancer or you're in a war or whatever. But when it comes to emotional stuff, and you're dealing with a problem that you just can't accept, the more you resist the fact that it is what it is, the more difficult it's going to be for you to deal with it. Unfortunately, in that situation, I told him it's very likely that his wife has already moved on in more ways than one. Most women have already found a landing spot. By the time they tell you they're leaving, they know where they're going, and they know who they're going with. It ain't you. So the sooner you wrap your brain around that, the better. It's a tough one, but the sooner you get there, the better. So accepting what is really the first step. You got to get there. You got to get to that place where you can just accept what is. You got to figure out what your attachments are here. When I'm talking about attachments, I'm not talking about stuff. Really, I'm talking about beliefs, your thoughts. What is the thought that's causing you the most pain? That is the thought that you've got to deal with. Because it's that thought that's going to haunt you for a long time. For me, that whole loss of identity thing was the thought. It was like, who am I now? Like, what's my role in the world if I'm not this guy, if I'm not the guy that I've been all this time? And keep in mind, I went through a whole bunch of changes around that. I quit my job, moved out of my neighborhood, lost my house, got a divorce. So my identity got completely whitewashed, if you know what I mean. So I had to kind of start over from scratch. And at first, that process seemed quite daunting. But the longer I spent realizing the opportunity that I had, the more I realized this was the best situation that could have ever happened. That it was better than anything I could have pre-planned. It was almost as if the universe had just given me this terrific gift that I could now live a life that I had always wanted to live. I had a better sense of who I am as a man, as a person, what my likes and dislikes are, and I don't have the responsibility of dealing with this, unhappy woman who is constantly trying to, direct my life in ways that makes her happy. And I'm not trying to make her happy in any way at all now. Now I could give a fuck what happens to her. And my life feels lighter. It felt, more easy. It felt almost as if I was given a second chance to live my life and do it again from the perspective of someone with, 50 years of life experience under his belt. And that is the opportunity that each and every one of you has. When you have that sense of, I've got all this wisdom, all this life experience, now I can finally live my life the way I want to live it. If you've ever been given a blank sheet of paper and told to fill it, to write a story, to make something amusing, to make something from nothing, if you've ever been given that task, as a writer, or like when you're in school, like to do an essay for a test or something like that, you kind of have a sense of what this is like. You're at the point now where you just need to figure this out. So you got to use your imagination, and you've got to let go of all of these attachments that you have to this old life, these beliefs, these ideas, these thoughts that you have that make you think that who you were in that role was who you are. Because it's not. That's not who you are at all. In fact, I can make the argument that, at a spiritual level, you're just a soul and a body, you know what I mean? And you have this opportunity to have these experiences, and the page has always been blank. But you've just been following someone else's path. You've just been allowing someone else to write your paper for you. If you've ever cheated like that in school, you get caught cheating, you get a 0. So that's kind of where you are now. You're at 0. But you got a chance. You can rewrite it. You can rewrite the paper. So you got to start with letting go of all those attachments about who you were and what that meant to you, and how it made you feel, because none of that stuff is important anymore. In fact, you could argue that a lot of it was just an illusion to begin with. So now you got to start from scratch. Who are you? Who are you to you in this life right now? And what's important to you? What do you want for yourself? What experiences do you value? And be careful about how you answer these questions, because a lot of your responses might be based on who you were and not who you are. Because I think when you peel away all the attachments of who you were, you're going to find that your need for in a relationship, for example, is not authentic. You really don't need to have someone in your life. Maybe you would like to have someone in your life, but that's different. That's completely different. It's like the difference between needing a drink and wanting a drink. If you're an alcoholic, if you're an addict, then you need something to make you feel normal again. That's different. If you want to enjoy a drink just because you're out having fun, that's a completely different experience. So if you want a relationship in your life because you think it would be fun to have, that's completely different than feeling like you need to have someone in your life because that's what you've always known. Huge difference, huge difference. Deciding about what career path you want to follow. What do you want to do? What would make you happy? Not what do you need to do. A lot of people get trapped into the idea that they can only do one or two things, and that is just a lack of imagination. There are lots and lots of opportunities for you to succeed at any number of things. It's just a matter of where's your desire, where's that uniqueness that you bring to the table that no one else can. that's where you need to be. That's where you need to be putting your time and your energy. When it comes to entertainment and recreational time, what are the things that you authentically like to do? What would be fun? Withdraw all the judgments that you saw through the eyes of that guy that you used to be, and start to see who you are authentically and what really makes you happy. What do you really want to do? You may be surprised when you start to get to know yourself a little better at what kinds of things that you really are drawn to. I mean, these are things that I learned about myself over the course of about 5 years. I mean, this isn't something you're going to pick up overnight, just to let you know. Very rarely does a guy get out of a marriage and the next day rediscover who he is. But this is the path that you're on, and you've got to see it that way. And you've got to understand that every day is like a day of discovery where you're just sort of learning who you are. You're getting to know yourself again for the first time. You may find that you want a 90-pound puppy. And then you'll ask yourself why. Anyway, rediscovering yourself is quite a journey, and you may find that there's lots and lots of things that you're drawn to that you never thought you would have been drawn to. And over the last 5 years, it has been the best gift I could have possibly imagined. It didn't start off that way, though. And that's the thing I need most of you guys to understand, is that initial period of that sense of rejection, that loss of identity, that loss of your family, that loss of your home, the economic part of it, the stress of the divorce, all of that shit is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. But when you get to the end of it, as long as you keep your head up and you keep your eyes looking forward and you start thinking about your life and what it could be, and you develop a vision for yourself, you can push yourself forward and you can find what comes next. You might just find, as I did, that once you identify who you are, what you want, and you apply the wisdom that you have gained through a lifetime, you can really create an amazing life for yourself. One that maybe exceeds your wildest dreams. But it starts with letting go of who you were and letting there be kind of a funeral in your head for that guy, because he's dead and he's gone. Mourn the loss, move on, and embrace who you really are and the man that you want to be. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know a guy who's following, going through a divorce or just at the end of that process, share it with him. Maybe it'll give him some insights as to how he might be able to make the most of this opportunity. Because I think most guys think of it as a failure. And I think it's more of, like I said, an opportunity to really be your authentic self. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.